Okay, so I've just off camera gone in and checked the defensive tackles and the defensive ends, and we're looking decent-ish there for this season, but our two best defensive ends will be graduating, so we definitely need to look at them as well. So let's just get some defensive ends here. Go to all and some distance as well. So we have this 5-star guy we won't be able to get, but there are 2, 3, 4-star guys. Let's get those. All right. So now we have some targets. Let's go in, and we knew that we needed actually some quarterbacks. So let's go in and spend a bunch of points on these guys. And we wanted some running backs, and we already have 2 there. And defensive tackle was decent-ish, not great, but decent-ish. We definitely want some defensive ends. And cornerbacks is also an issue. And strong safety. We don't have any strong safeties, so we'll need to find some strong safeties. So what do we have? The best guy within 500 miles is a 3-star. For a 68 prestige team, if we can avoid getting too far above recruiting rank 1000, that'll be good. I think for now, let's just get these 3 guys on board. Or just, if I add a point here, that effectively adds them to my targets list as well. So let's just go in and get a deeper understanding of what these recruiting points that I'm allocating actually use. So the recruiting points are your main currency. They are basically what you use to convince players to come to your school. And depending on the fit, the player will value each of your recruiting points more or less. And what I mean by fit is that the players have a bunch of preferences, and those preferences, along with some other things, add up to basically what you could call a modifier. So either your each recruiting point will be worth more than 1 point or less than 1 point. Or if all the modifiers even out, then they'll be worth 1 point per point. So how do these modifiers factor in? So if we go to a player, we can just find any old player here. We can look at the personality ratings here. And obviously, values prestige factors in directly with the amount of prestige in your school. So if a player has a high rating in values prestige, you will have a better chance if you are a high prestige school. Having a low rating in values prestige doesn't mean as much. It basically means that smaller schools have a better chance because the bigger schools don't have the advantage. And values security basically means that he would like to be in a place where he can stay for 4 years. So he'll be less likely to transfer, and he also, if you're a school that cuts a bunch of guys and stuff like that, that'll make him a bit nervous. Values loyalty basically means that he wants to feel like that he is a priority to you, and he wants you to keep. If you want him, then you have to show it, so to say. So these guys don't really like if you come at them and give them a bit recruiting calls, add some recruiting points, and call them and offer them a scholarship, and then redecide because you found something better and remove the scholarship again, and then come back later and add the scholarship again, stuff like that. They want to feel a commitment from you. So these guys prefer if you keep recruiting them steadily and show that they're wanted rather than there's a second or third choice. Values winning sort of gives away what itself. They will look at how you're doing this season, but they will also look a season or two back. And if you're doing good, then that'll increase the value of your points. Values playing time, again, sort of gives itself away. It means that the guy who wants to play, he wants to go to a school where he has a chance to start. So if you have a guy with super high value playing time, he will look at your roster and he will see, well, you have 2 or 3 guys who are way better than me and none of them are seniors. So I'm going to be sitting on the bench for a couple of years, and that's not at all what I want. I want to see the field. So if you have guys with values playing time that is super high, then you need to go look at your roster and figure out whether or not this guy will be likely to start. And if you deem that he's not likely to start, then probably he's going to come to that conclusion as well. And that will make your recruiting points worth less. Values close to home is, again, they want to stay in state, or they want to stay, next to at the university where they grew up. So people with really high rating and values close to home will, be less likely or devalue the recruiting points of some school that's on the other side of the country. So if I have a guy in California with really high rating here, then everything else being equal, the recruiting points of, I don't know, say Florida Gators or someone on the East Coast will be worth less if he has a high rating. Values market size is basically the conference that you're in. So all of the conferences have a aggregate or a conference prestige, which is derived mainly from the prestige of the teams in the conference. And it's dynamic, so it changes every year. But obviously, because prestige changes fairly slowly, the conference prestige will also change fairly slowly. But in 50 years or something like that, it's possible that a conference like the Sun Belt or something like that will actually become a big conference with lots of high prestige teams and winning titles and stuff like that. But for now, you can sort of using the default settings, you can sort of go by your standard knowledge of what are the big conferences, where are the big crowds. Market size also factors in the fan base of the team that you're in addition to the conference that you're in. So if you have a big fan base, that will be positive for your market size. So if a guy has a high rating in values market size, then if you have a big fan base or from one of the big conferences, then your points will be worth more. And again, it's important to stress that just because some guy has a low value, like values prestige 35 on this guy, it doesn't mean that it's entirely ineffective. It just means that the modifier for the relative prestige of the guys offering him scholarships will be lower. So even if the ratings are low, they still matter. They just don't matter as much. So these are the basic ratings that they use to sort of determine where they want to go. There are a bunch of other factors that are sort of behind the scenes that I won't be going into right now. But you can get very far just by looking at these factors. All right. So if we go back to recruiting. So our recruiting points, basically when I add them to a player, each week the player will calculate all of these factors that matter for him in terms of whether or not he likes your school on all these different parameters. And that will basically give him how can you say, well, a modifier or an indication of how much each of your points are worth. And if we look at our targets here, you can see that I've added 10 points we just changed it so that the maximum that you can add is 10 instead of 20. That was actually an oversight in one of the earlier patches that it got raised to 20. So 10 is the maximum that you can offer, and you can expect that the AI will be offering 10 on as many Kais as they can. Usually what I like to do, and again, there are different strategies here, but for the players that I are gambling on, that I really want to get, I want to go hard as early to just not get behind in case I actually have a chance to land them. And so you can see for all the 4-star players here, I have added 10 points. Now, you won't have enough points almost always, almost never. You will almost never have enough points to be able to put 10 points on each recruit, which is why I put 1 point on all these guys down here. And a big part of the recruiting, becoming good at recruiting, is actually to be able to week to week shuffle around your points. So you start adding points to the players where you have competition, and you gradually remove points from the players where you don't have competition. Right, scouting points are 0 to 20, as you can see in the tooltip here. And the scouting points reveal a player's ratings. So if I click on this guy, you can see that right now I have certainty 1, which is basically I only have like a little bit of game tape on the guy. None of my coaches have been scrutinizing him, studying the game tape. So right now I don't have any indication here in the scouted attributes. What I do have is I have the coaching grades, which are again based on what little game tape they've watched, and these won't change. So you can rely on these. And the physique latches on to strength and endurance. Athleticism latches on to speed and agility. Technique is latches on to what is relevant to his position. So for a quarterback, technique this grade would comprise his accuracy and his throwing power. But for a linebacker like this guy, what we're looking at is mainly tackling and hands. The football IQ is basically his intelligence and his position skill, and the intangibles is his personality and the some hidden attributes as well. And you can see that here goes his personality ratings, but in order to unlock those, I need to interview him first, and I interview players using scouting points. Over here we have a commentary, which is basically our coach's description of the kid. And I think my impression is that most people actually don't read these, but there are some useful information in here. So for instance, he's a good tackler. The AI wouldn't write this unless he was a good tackler. So you can actually glean a lot of information just from this as well. And then the coach grades, that is basically a numerical value where all of your coaches grade his value. And these grades range from, I want to say, 0 to the high 30s. There is no fixed ceiling because, well, in principle, I could calculate a fixed ceiling, but the coach grades are based on what the coach is like. So if we go to one of our coaches, we can go here, and we go profile. So we can see this guy, he likes top-notch cornerbacks, and he likes defensive linemen who can rush the passer, and he likes versatile linebackers and stuff like that. So each of the coaches actually have preferences that influence their coach grades. So you need to keep that in mind when you're sort of evaluating the coach grades. As we progress, I'll be certain to do one of each of these actions so we can actually get the information here. But so be aware that when you see these grades, that the top players in the game will grade out with around late or high 30s. But again, it depends on the coach. So just because one coach grades them in the high 30s, another coach may grade them slightly lower because he doesn't value, say, a speedy linebacker or something like that. But still, just by sort of looking at these grades, you will get an impression of how good the player is, because he won't get to high 30s unless he is really good in pretty much every aspect. And finally, down here, we have the recruiting opinions. And in order to unlock these, this doesn't show yet because we haven't seen the week. But in order to unlock these, you actually need to do a home visit with the guy. And that will tell him, or that will tell you how the player values the different aspects. So the player will say something like, well, he likes the prestige of Florida Gators, and he likes the ability to win of Alabama or whatever. And so that will sort of give his opinions on different aspects of the office that he has. And obviously you want to see your own name here, your own team name here, so you know that you are at least his favorite in some of the aspects. Right? Over here, we have a high target, which is basically when I'm here in my targets, if I give up on a guy, for coding reasons, it's undesirable to actually get entirely rid of the player from your target list, because if you want to go back on him, then we want to remember how many points you spent, stuff like that. So they will remain in your target list, but if you don't want to watch them anymore, then you can hide the player, and you can see down here that you can see the players that you've hidden in case you want to bring them back and target them again. And we have an interest indicator here, which is basically a vague indication of the modifiers that you have. So a high interest will indicate that you have a lot of modifiers, positive modifiers on your recruiting points, and a low interest will indicate that you have a negative modifier. So your recruiting points won't be worth a lot to guys with low interest. Whereas if he has high interest, your recruiting points will be worth more. And again, a report certainty, we have the same over here. It's the same number you get. And a list of who's recruiting him. And then finally, we have the talking points. So the talking points are basically what you tell him. So when you talk to him and you're trying to convince him to come play for you, you need to you can sort of accentuate different features of your team to sort of depending on what you think he likes. So if your team has been going 2-10 for the last 5 years, probably you don't want to add talking points in winning, but maybe in playing time and stuff like that. The important thing is to remember regarding talking points is that these cap out, so to speak. So it's not a good idea to sort of overload on one thing and just keep yappering on about the great location of Nevada or whatever. What you really want to do is you want to focus on 2 or 3 of them, and as the weeks pass, you can actually see an indication of how you say hits on the talking points. So if I put some points in academics, then and I sim a week, and then I will get an indication here that shows me how he responded. And if he responded positively, there will be an indication here. And for each indication I get here, for each hit I get, I will get a bonus to my recruiting points. So you'll need to keep tabs on these and maybe shuffle them around if you notice for several weeks that you're not getting any hits on these. And again, you can obviously optimize this by doing a interview with him, so you get his personality ratings here. So you can say, well, this guy really values market size, so let's go optimize our talking points on that regard, and tell him that even though popular perception tells him otherwise, the Sun Belt is a great place to go, or something like that, and they have very dedicated fans or whatever. So that should sort of take you through the recruiting screen. Then we have the player bio. This isn't super important for recruiting. One thing that is worth noting is his social type, which you also might want to sort of factor in case you're trying to build a high character team, or if you're going to be disregarding it and building a ragtag conglomeration of, I don't know, rapscallions or whatever. And then the history. We just added the history in one of the previous patches here. And the reason we do that is that the player history will actually log when he goes to visit teams, and when teams attend or visits him at home and stuff like that. So some of the recruiting actions that teams are taking will actually figure here in history. We'll see that in once we progress a bit. Right. So we've gone through the recruiting points, how they work. We've gone through the scouting points. If we go back here, you can see that we have our scouting points here. We have our interviews here. Interviews cost 5 scouting points. So you can see up here that this changed to 65, and when I untag it, it changes to 70 again. All of these, the home visit, invite to game, attend high school game, facility tour, and phone call, these are using the outreach points. And each of these give different sorts of bonuses. We already saw that the home visits will unlock these recruiting opinions, and the attend high school game will unlock the coach grades here, and the interview will unlock the personality ratings. So we wanted to make it so you had fairly tough choices. So you have not a lot of outreach points because, you know, most of your coach's time is spent going over film and talking to his other coaches and stuff like that to determine his ratings. So you only have a few of these every week, and they cost different amounts. So 5 outreach points and 2 for inviting him to come watch a game with you. And obviously, when you invite him to watch a game, it's best if it's a game you win, but you still get a bonus even if you lose. And you can attend a high school game, that's 4 points, and you can give him a tour of your facility and show off your excellent libraries or weight rooms or whatever. And you can just give him a call. And the important thing to remember here as well is that if you sort of stalk him, and, you know, every week you turn up to a high school game and you call him every week and you stand up outside his window at night, just, you know, knocking on his window, begging him to come to the Sun Belt or whatever, then eventually he'll get tired of you. So you also want to spread these out a bit. And especially you want to sort of focus on the high school games and the home visits, because they unlock information that you need. But so these are 3 and these are 5. So I can do either 2 of these or one of each, or 3 of these every week. And again, you can see over here we have the hidden in case I just don't want to have him on this target list anymore. All right, I am going to go through and just set everything off screen, and then we can progress a bit and see how the week-to-week handling of the recruiting can go. And I should mention here before I go off screen that what I'm telling you here is is not the be all and end all for how to do recruiting. There are a lot of wildly successful coaches in the multiplayer leagues, and each of them have different strategies and different priorities in terms of how they do recruiting. Um, so so feel free, and we certainly encourage you to experiment with different ways of prioritizing your points and finding players and allocating points and stuff like that. This is just a very rudimentary rundown of how everything works, along with some general comments about how I try to do it. I have a team in one of the multiplayer leagues where I am sort of middling in a division and trying not to win, because we don't want people complaining that the developer is winning. But I sort of like to participate just because it gives me a good feel for the community, and it also lets me actually play the game a bit more in depth than what we do in testing, which is kind of fun, because it also allows me sort of to discover things that would be nice to have and give me ideas for the next versions and stuff like that. Right, so I'll be right back when I've done the rest of the recruiting.